I was fired in front of everyone, but I wasn't the one who did it. He was the last to touch the file, so they blamed him. Fired in front of everyone. No questions asked, no truth considered. But what if the real culprit sat just one desk away smiling in silence? This is the true-to-life story of a quiet betrayal inside a modern workplace. A dedicated young man loyal to his job and trusting of his colleagues suddenly becomes the scapegoat for a financial mistake he never made. Shamed, erased, forgotten. You stood there in front of the whole office. Your name called, your badge revoked. And just like that, you were erased. They didn't give you a chair. Not even a moment to catch your breath. Your name was called through the intercom, cold and direct. Everyone turned. Heads lifted from keyboards. The office grew quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that knows a sacrifice is about to be made. You stood, not because you were guilty, but because you were told to. They led you to the meeting room, where glass walls could not hide the tension inside. Your boss sat across from you. His eyes were hard, unreadable. HR was there too. Papers already printed. The decision made. No explanation. No fair hearing. No voice. You've been found responsible for a significant budget discrepancy, they said. The breach occurred under your watch. As a result, your contract is terminated effective immediately. That was it? Just like that. No one asked why you'd stay late every night. Why you skipped your own birthday dinner to meet a deadline. Why your laptop had been left unlocked during lunch breaks, trusting the people around you. Trusting him, the colleague beside you, the one with the easy smile and helpful tone. The one who always asked you questions about the budget files. The one who kept saying, relax, we're a team here. But when the storm came, you were the only one drenched. You looked through the glass. Outside, the office continued as if nothing had happened. Someone sipped coffee. Someone scrolled their phone. But many watched silently, carefully, like spectators at an execution. You signed the termination form. Your hands didn't shake. Not because you weren't hurt, but because you'd felt this before. That strange numbness when life decides to hit you without warning. As you gathered your things, your ID badge was taken. The security guard didn't look you in the eye. You walked past the desks, past the ones who laughed with you just last week. Now, they barely looked up, guilt disguised as indifference, fear disguised as professionalism, and then you were gone, out the doors, into the daylight, into a world that had no idea a man had just lost everything he built, not because he failed, but because someone else succeeded in being invisible. You didn't cry, not yet. You didn't scream. That would come later. For now, you just kept walking, carrying nothing but silence, and a question burning in your mind. Why didn't anyone stop it? The days before were quiet. Numbers, meetings, coffee, and a quiet betrayal brewing beside you. They say betrayal doesn't come with a warning. Sometimes it wears cologne, offers you coffee, cracks a joke at the Monday morning meeting. You laugh, because why wouldn't you? This is just another work week, another spreadsheet, another quarterly target to meet. You showed up early. You stayed late. You were the guy they could count on until the day they didn't. That week something felt off. The budget file had more hands on it than usual. There were changes, small, subtle, but just enough to make you blink. You remember pausing, frowning at the numbers. But there was no reason to suspect anything. After all, the file had your name on it. You were the final approver. And the man at the desk beside you, he was just another teammate, always so eager to help. Always asking questions like, hey, remind me how we categorize department reserves again, or mind if I look over the projection model. You didn't think twice, because you believed in teamwork, because you thought trust was a given in places where you shared deadlines and stress, because he always looked so sincere. That Friday, he offered to cover your late shift so you could get to your sister's engagement dinner on time. You thanked him. You left your computer unlocked, your email open, the budget folder minimized. You thought you owed him gratitude, but what you really owed was caution. You'd always believed that if you worked hard, stayed honest, and treated people fairly, the universe would respond in kind. But the universe doesn't audit spreadsheets. It doesn't ask who typed what or who watched quietly while the damage was done. It was in those quiet days when everything seemed fine that the storm began forming. He started staying later than you. He started asking less and doing more independently. You thought he was just growing confident, taking initiative. That's what high performers do, right? Until the Monday after the finance review when the director mentioned a discrepancy, a small hole in the budget, nothing massive but enough to raise a brow. You stayed calm. You offered to double-check the records. You even took responsibility in the meeting. If it's on my file, I'll trace it. Your boss nodded but didn't say much. Your colleague didn't say anything at all. Just a nod. Just a pen tapping the desk. You should have known then, but it's always easier to see the clues when you're looking backward. You went home that night and told yourself not to worry. Mistakes happen. You'd find it, fix it, move on, but the truth was already bleeding into your name, and someone else had already washed their hands. The email was traced back to your account, but the real question was who had access to your seat when you were gone. It wasn't dramatic. There was no camera catch, no red-handed scene, just data, just fingerprints made of code. And code, as you know, tells only part of the truth. It started with an email one that approved a budget adjustment. It was sent from your account, logged from your device, marked with your name. Except you didn't send it, but who would believe that? The IT logs confirmed your session was active. The timestamp matched the same night you left early, the night your colleague offered to finish your shift. The file was accessed. The numbers were moved. A line item was split in two and redirected to a vendor account you'd never worked with before. On paper, you were the last touch, the signature, the final click, the problem. The systems don't track who's physically sitting in your chair. They don't record trust. Your boss brought in the report. Quiet, serious, formal. He said there had been concerns, repeated anomalies. You didn't argue. You simply asked for the audit trail. You asked to speak to IT. You asked to look them in the eye and say, I didn't do this, but policy doesn't bend for innocence. It bends for optics, and the optics looked bad. When you glanced toward your colleague, he avoided your gaze, adjusted his tie, picked up a pen and tapped it on the table like he was counting seconds. The same pen that once scribbled jokes on post-it notes for your desk. He said nothing. No defense for you. No surprise. Just silence. You realized something then. Sometimes the most dangerous people aren't the ones who attack. They're the ones who disappear when you need them the most. The team didn't speak up. No one asked if the timeline made sense. No one remembered the day you stayed till midnight, fixing another department's numbers. All those favors, all those extra hours, vanished. You were now the one who messed up the quarter. That label spreads fast, in whispers at the coffee machine, in side eyes during meetings, in the sudden awkwardness when you enter a room and conversations pause. They didn't have to call you guilty. They just had to stop calling you anything at all. And so the trap was set. A perfect handoff of blame built on shared access, casual trust, and a silence that cut deeper than any accusation. You weren't fired yet, but you knew it was coming. The question was never, did you do it? It was, how fast can we make this go away? You left, but the truth stayed behind. It echoed in inboxes and hallway glances. The box you carried out that day wasn't heavy, but the silence inside it was. You told yourself you'd move on, that it wasn't worth fighting a war no one believed you could win. You updated your resume, turned off notifications, and forced yourself to smile at dinners where no one asked why you seemed quieter than before. But the echo didn't stop. It came first in a message short, hesitant from a colleague you barely knew. Hey, weird question. Did you really approve that transfer? It didn't look like something you'd sign off on. You stared at the message. Then came another, this time from a client. They were confused. A request had been made to reroute funds for a project using your name, but with specifications that didn't match the original proposal. Did you authorize this? They asked. You didn't. You never saw that document. Piece by piece, whispers became questions. A junior staff member mentioned in passing, funny thing, that report you got blamed for. I swear I saw your buddy editing it a few nights ago. Buddy, that word tasted wrong now. You began digging, not for revenge, just for clarity. For something solid in a world that had felt like quicksand. And slowly the pieces began to align. You remembered your unlocked computer. You remembered the night he stayed behind. You remembered the access logs you once helped IT set up when your team moved to remote sync. And you remembered someone who owed you a favor. Alex, the IT guy, the one who never spoke much but always noticed everything. You reached out cautiously. Hey man, hope you're good. Can I ask you something off the record? He didn't answer right away. But when he did, it was just one line. Meet me after hours. I think you should see something. That night, standing in the dim back corner of a coffee shop, Alex slid a USB across the table. I didn't send this to anyone, he said, but I couldn't forget what they did to you. You opened the file. It wasn't just logs. It was proof, timestamps, access IPs, session overlaps, file revisions done under your profile but initiated from a different MAC address. One that belonged to your neighbor at the desk. The guy who'd smiled, joked, and nodded along while watching your career burn. Your hands clenched, not in anger, but in resolution. This wasn't about clearing your name anymore. It was about restoring something bigger. Truth. You didn't fight back, but truth has legs. It runs fast when it smells fear. You didn't storm the office. You didn't call for revenge. You simply sent one anonymous email signed by no one, but written with the weight of everything they ignored. Attached the logs, the revision history, the access records, the timeline that didn't lie. Then, silence. A different kind of silence. One that didn't sting, but listened. You waited, and so did they, because even the boldest fraudster hesitates when shadows shift direction. At first, nothing seemed to happen. The office still buzzed. Meetings still happened. Promotions were still handed out. But inside the HR department, questions began. The finance director asked to revisit the budget trail. The head of IT was quietly asked, "Can we confirm who actually accessed the approval system that night?" And then it happened. Your old colleague, still wearing his polished smile, was pulled into a closed-door meeting. He emerged without it. Within days, he was placed on administrative leave. Within a week, an internal audit report was leaked. Not to the press, just circulated quietly. It didn't mention you by name, but it was clear. A misattribution of authorizations, improper use of internal credentials, ethical concerns under review. The whispers changed. The same people who avoided your eyes now muttered, "Maybe he was set up." And your boss, the same man who'd handed you that termination letter without a flicker of doubt, he called. At first you let it ring, 3 times. Then you picked up. There was a pause on the other end, like he was searching for the right version of himself to speak through. "I owe you an apology," he said. "We were wrong, and I should have listened when you tried to explain." You didn't answer right away, because it wasn't about his guilt anymore. It was about your clarity. He offered to reinstate you, with back pay, with public acknowledgement. You declined, not out of pride, but because you had already begun building something new, something clean, something yours. But before you hung up, you said one thing. "I wasn't the one who failed your system. I was the one your system failed." And with that, you hung up. The truth had found its way back. It didn't arrive with sirens or headlines. It came like morning light, slow, silent, and unstoppable. Because justice, when it comes, doesn't knock. It opens the door you were pushed out of, and holds it wide open. You could have gone back. You could have sued. But you chose something higher, peace. There was no parade, no dramatic announcement, no triumphant return with cameras waiting by the elevator. The world didn't stop to congratulate you. And that was okay. Because real victories don't shout. They breathe. They settle in the quiet places, like the corner of your new workspace where the sunlight now hits your desk just right. Or the first morning you woke up and didn't feel anger heavy in your chest. You built something new. Not out of vengeance, but out of principle. A small firm. Nothing grand. Just a space where transparency wasn't a buzzword, but a backbone. Where every number had a name and every task had a trace. Where no one's trust was left unguarded. Your first hire, Alex, the quiet IT guy who once slid a USB across a cafe table and never asked for anything in return. He didn't do it to be a hero. He did it because truth deserves a witness. And so did you. Sometimes people from your old job reach out. Quiet messages, short emails. "I should have said something. I'm sorry I didn't stand up." You don't respond to all of them. Not because you're angry, but because healing doesn't need every stone turned. Some things are better left as reminders of what to never become, of what silence costs, and of what integrity earns eventually. There's no picture on your wall of that day in the glass meeting room, no framed copy of the audit report that cleared your name. But there is one thing you keep, a note handwritten, folded neatly tucked into the top drawer of your new desk. It's from a former intern. You barely remember mentoring him, but apparently you did. It reads, "You were the only one who saw me when I felt invisible. I just got my first job. I hope I can be like you." You read it sometimes when the days are hard, because in the end, this was never about the job. It was about who you are when no one's watching, and what you do when someone's watching you burn. You walked away, not because you were weak, but because you were already walking towards something better. You didn't need to scream. You just needed to stand, and you did, quietly, powerfully, forever changed.